Good morning, Fred. We're live.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good morning, guys and gals out there in Warrior Nation. Once again, once again, you're joined by Rich Brown. I'm a retired Marine Corps officer, former police officer, corrections officer, and special operations response team member. And I'm joined today by Mr. Fred Bauer. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning, Rich.
Hey, before we get into Fred's bio in today's show, I want to tell you guys about the American Warrior Society, our beautiful challenge coin there. There's Warriors Wanted on the back. I had quite a few people joining recently, and I would submit that it probably has something to do with the times we're living in today. And Fred and I will talk about that here in just a moment. But if you're looking for something that's designed to be virtual, on demand, verified information that's going to keep you and your family safer, I encourage you to take a 14-day free test drive inside our training vault, where you will learn unarmed combatives, edge weapons, less lethal, rifle, handgun, shotgun, white belt or blue belt precision jiu-jitsu. We partnered with Atomic Athlete, some former special operators down in Austin, Texas, and they, in conjunction with us, put together Warrior One. It's a fitness/shooting program to make you harder to kill. Let's see who's on the show this morning. We got Mr. Will Rhodes is on. He is coin number 2269 out there in Missouri. Will Parker in Montana, coin number 800. And our good friend Alan Kelly is on from occupied Virginia. Good morning, Alan. Mr. Fred Bauer here. Let me read his bio. Fred Bauer, director of the Gung Ho Chuan Association and second regent of the American Society of Arwrologists, holds a 5th degree black belt and is a self-protection expert. Fred is a retired corporal and is a career law enforcement officer with over 29 years of experience. 20 of those years were spent serving with the Tactical Operations Unit. Mr. Bauer has conducted overseas operations and VIP protection details in Bosnia, Kosovo, and Kenya. Additionally, he has trained members of President Hamid Karzai's protection detail, U.S. Air Marshals, and members of the Jordanian Special Forces, as well as the Home Guard. His credentials include United States Marine Corps Close Combat Instructor, State Department Certified DT Instructor, International Police Task Force DT Instructor. Mr. Bauer authored American Arwrology, the Science of All-Out Hand-to-Hand Fighting, and is a contributing editor for Raider Magazine. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Fred, let's start with your book, my friend. What is it and who is it exactly for?
Okay. American Arwrology. If I can give a little history of what arwrology is. Arwrology was based out of Canada. It was run by individual named Dr. Gordon Paragard. He had a book that was written for the war effort, and in 1946, the book was banned in Canada because it was deemed too violent. Now, once that took place, that whole organization kind of like went underground. So since like 1946 to present day until like 2003, not many people knew about Dr. Paragard or arwrology. So when the Canadian Society of Arwrologists gave Bob Casper, who is the founder of the GHCA, permission to use their principles, Bob wanted to write a book so people became familiar with Dr. Paragard. While Bob was writing that book, he was diagnosed with cancer and then succumbed to cancer. Bob turned everything over to me, and I started going through all his research, and I finished the book up for him. So the book is a dedication to Dr. Paragard and Bob Casper. It's more to get an idea of the principles and techniques and tactics that Paragard used, what he believed in. Dr. Paragard had, besides being a doctor, had a jiu-jitsu, Japanese or samurai jiu-jitsu background. Mm-hmm. And he utilized that, the principles and tactics, and put that in the book. So the book itself is based on a lot of the principles and tactics that Dr. Paragard used, which some of them we adopted into the proven GHCA POI. And the book is for anybody interested in hand-to-hand combat. It gives different drills that we believe that can work on. We believe in audio conditioned reflex. Obviously, everybody in this community heard of muscle memory. We believe muscle really doesn't have memory because you could do it 1,000 times, one times it changed. We can condition our body to move and react to violent encounters. So there's drills there, there's unarmed techniques, and some knife techniques also in the book.
So would it's for people like us probably that are in the self-defense space, martial arts space. That is probably who the book is for, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's some people that are. Let me say this another way. There seems to be a resurgence of sorts, a renaissance, if you will, of looking back to the old World War II OSS fighting style and some of the other things. You know, I got a good friend, Mr. Todd Fox of Tor Protection, and he is running around collecting up all these old jiu-jitsu books, like law enforcement jiu-jitsu books from the late 1800s, as crazy as that sounds, and early 1900s. And it's almost like what's old is new again.
Yeah, exactly. And got a little bit, just really quick, a little history on like the GHCA. We were formed in 1992. All right. And at that time, obviously the internet didn't exist, all the social media stuff like that. So the GHCA at that time was one of the premier groups that you worked with World War II combatives. And as like you said, we have a library of books that I've collected. It's kind of like mandatory reading. Everybody kind of like knows. Well, they should know the names, like Applegate, Fairburn, Sykes, Stiers, all those, and that's leading into it. That's why we kind of like wrote that book about Paragard also.
And that's go ahead. I was just going to say, as far as like for those that may not recognize some of the names that Fred just laid out there, Fairburns had this thing called the timetable of death. You familiar with that one?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
And of course, it has since been debunked. And one of my good friends, Michael Janich. Do you know Mike Janich?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So Mike sit down, and I think he actually interviewed Fairburn before he passed away, and it's like, hey, look, we've looked into the timetable of death. If you cut a carotid, it says in the timetable of death in your book that the person will die within X number of seconds and so on. He goes, we found that this is inaccurate. And basically, and I'm giving a fourth party rendition of this conversation. He's like, we only had a limited amount of time to take accountants and get them ready to jump in behind enemy lines. And it was more important for them to be confident with the skills and things than it was to be completely medically accurate. And I think that's a fair thing. Don't you, Fred?
Yeah. Yes. Look at, even today, way back when Mike did research that and go into that, it is a fair evaluation. But look, you could look at today, and we know that it's incorrect. How many times, again, talking about law enforcement, we'll get into a little bit more. How many times have we seen bad guys, shot 9 times and they're still coming at you? Drugs, 100%. Alcohol, that person's will is going to, you have to stop that person's will. And again, we used that as a guideline, and I'm sure if you look at some stuff throughout history, you could probably, I don't want to say debunk everything, but there's got to be, you know, that's why we always want to continue to research and look into things. Absolutely.
Well, to me, I think, it's context is king. Let's look at the context in which these things were developed and the speed with which they had to be put together. And I think all that has a play in it. Yes. Rex Applegate, for those that, we talked about Fairburn, but for those that may not be familiar with Rex Applegate, he had a lot of the instinctive point shooting, wrote a lot of books about those sorts of things. And I remember as a kid, not as a kid, but maybe as a young Marine, going through Paladin Press and buying all these books and stuff, because that's what we had back in the day. If you wanted access to this kind of information, it was good old Paladin Press. And I remember being like, did they not have sights on the weapons back then? What was the idea of this crouched shooting platform that didn't rely on sights? But I think they were pushing the frontiers of our community, and we have to respect them for what they did and where we are today. It's easy to look back at some of the things and go scratch your head, but at the same time, they were playing jazz in a way. They were experimenting. They were seeing what could be done, right?
Yeah, and even with with Fairburn, and most again what I would refer to as our combative forefathers, they researched, and like Fairburn's first book probably came out in 1935, and then when he started going off to teach the OSS, in his books he had between 12 and 15 techniques. By the time he was teaching the OSS, he brought it down to 4, because they were getting they were getting real-time information, Applegate, what was working in the battlefield and what wasn't working. And they utilized that and brought, like I said, they started out with 12, 15. They brought it down to 4. So, yeah.
Well, I like that because it's evolving. It's not dogmatic. It's not static. They're constantly evolving and improving their techniques. And that's all we can ask for anybody in the combatives community.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Will Parker says, try something new, test it. Does it work within its context? Oh my God, this is blasphemy. Dr. Gordon Botson is coin number 1688 in Ohio. Tony says, go to YouTube and hit the like button. Well, that would really be appreciated. Like and subscribe, do all that good stuff. Please like and share on this beautiful Friday morning. So as far as your book, Fred, did you take the text from, say, 1943 and revitalize it, republish it, completely scrap it, and then redo it? What did you do there?
So what we did as an organization, to go into the book, we took what we felt were his better techniques and what principles we followed that we picked up from him. And then what we did is for almost 2.5 years, we drilled them together. We tested them. And then after that, Bob was doing some more research on the side on his own, and that's when he started to write the book. So it took, we tested everything, evaluated everything that we wanted or probably wanted to add to the GHCA's POI, and then that's what we kind of like put in the book.
You and I were talking before we came on, and you weren't a Marine. However, like me, you're a Marine Corps close combat instructor. And we were talking about that. And what I became a CCI under was the old Gunny Dom Vito style, the line program, linear infighting neural override engagement system. And then there was a time where I believe your system was adopted by the Marine Corps. And then and you worked with Master Gunny Carlo Orso, right?
Correct.
And
yes.
then we went to what we have. I think they still have it now. I've been retired for 12 years, so I couldn't speak to what they're doing now. But the McMap, Marine Corps Martial Arts Program.
Yes.
I think that we always have to look at the context, because if you look at like the line program and like, what is this? We got to consider And I'm saying this for maybe those that are going to be listening to the podcast to come, Fred, that aren't really, they don't understand our community. Gunny Don Vito, man, he's making a system for the basic Marine to use. He's giving you a kind of little menu of things to do. And the context is you're wearing your battle equipment, your LBV, your load bearing vest, your plate carriers, whatever. And, being in close contact with each other, that way you're going to get hung up on your gear and stuff like that. So I think it's important, whether we're talking about Fairburn or Orso or Don Vito or you, Fred, that let's make sure we do intellectual justice to what we're talking about and place it in the appropriate context.
Yep.
Let's shift gears. Fred, you're a retired law enforcement officer. What's the state of American law enforcement today, sir?
So I can speak from a local community, a large local community, where our townspeople love us. We get treated phenomenal. Then you can travel 15 miles away from here and go to a city and everybody hates you. We all know, and what we've kind of like seen, defund the police and stuff like that. It definitely takes a toll. It's got to take a toll on the officers today. Now, when we talk about the law enforcement community, are we talking about? Do you want to talk about training?
Absolutely, brother. Take it wherever you want, Fred.
Okay. So I still, and I have a son who's in college now. If he came to me and said that I wanted to be in law enforcement, I would say awesome. I thought it was the greatest job. I loved it. I had a fantastic, phenomenal career, and I wouldn't turn anybody away from it. But with that being said, there are things that have definitely changed. Obviously, some for the better, but also because I think just obviously the way society is. But I also believe everything comes around in a circle. So my experience, I was back in the early 90s. I was in an ER with a prisoner who had to use force on. I'm sitting in there, and it's we're in at that time the hospital. We were in an African American community, and I'm the only white person in the ER. And that morning is when the video of Rodney King is being shown. So I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So that takes place. That obviously, there for a long while, put a damper on law enforcement. 9/11 happened. After 9/11, law enforcement, firefighters, EMS, everybody loved us. We are in a situation right now where, again, sooner or later, something, I don't want to say tragic, but something's going to happen, and we'll be back at in a good place. So that's my state. Training wise, I think today, and it's not every academy, obviously, but things are definitely getting watered down. I think they're spending. I think it could also, it's not just law enforcement. I'm sure military. This is why we want, like the GHCA. This is why we say we want to keep our fighting heritage alive. Hand in hand, the combat, even shooting, things like that. It kind of like gets put on the wayside. Those are the things that are gonna per se get you more don't want to say in trouble. Those are the things that you're going to need. That's the toolbox. Those are the skills that you're going to need to help you. Today, everyone's, talking about, everyone's feelings and how not to offend this community and stuff like that. So, training wise, definitely got watered down. But if you follow the pattern of World War, like what we did in World War II, everybody was sick of the violence of after World War II. All right, so a lot of time when you look at books and things that were written in the 50s and 60s, it's a lot of that. I don't want to say combat, but the traditional martial arts and things like that, they started even to get to water down. So, yeah, now at some point I think we'll get into some stronger leadership, and hopefully we'll get into some stronger leadership, and everything else will start trickling down to law enforcement, military, and society. We need to be a little bit tougher in society also.
Fred, you're the director of the Gung Ho Chuan Association. What is that?
What is that? All right, the GHCA is a World War II era close quarter combat organization. It's based on World War II era principles, techniques, and tactics of personal combat. We typically don't use it as a self-defense system, but it can be used obviously as a self-defense system. It's methods of aggressive, offensive, no holds bar gutter fighting used to eliminate the threat. That's
very succinct. I like it. Is there a website people can go to learn more? Is there?
We don't have a website anymore. We do have a Facebook page. Mm-hmm. You can look that up.
If you send me the link, I'll put it in the show notes, Fred. Just send me the link later. Yeah.
All right. Well, I believe how we got in touch. You've been in touch with Will Bolton.
Mm-hmm.
Will actually Will's one of our instructors, and he runs the Facebook page. But I'll get you the link, and then we can link it up. But yeah, we have a Facebook page.
Perfect.
So
perfect. Will says the Spartans pancration seems to have essentially lost for most of. Yeah, I'd love to see that curriculum. Jeff says the academia and criminal justice today is failing the students who are seeking a career in that profession. Yeah, and I think he's right. And I think it goes back to a lot of the watering down. Some of it is pandering to one ethnicity or one community. And your point about this divide between, I'm in a rural community. We live out here on the farm in East Tennessee. I don't see the problems that I see on the news, right?
Correct.
But when I go into a major urban center, there it is. And so I think that divide between the flyover states and the large metropolitan areas here in America is only growing and accelerating. There are probably reasons for that are above my pay grade. But it makes me wonder where this is heading, which kind of leads us to the second part of what I wanted to talk to you about today. And I know this may be a little outside your lane. It's certainly outside my lane, but I think as two Americans in this community, I think we should probably have these conversations. The new movie out, Civil War, I saw it. Much ado about nothing. It really doesn't explain how California and Texas got together to form the Western Alliance or whatever they're called, and they're trying to take over America.
Well, we know that's fiction then in that movie.
Precisely, and I think that's why they did it.
There's no way Texas and California would go together.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of people are going to go see the movie, Fred, because they want to see how the hell did this happen. It doesn't explain it, so let's get that out of the way. But I think when you see movies like Civil War and the Barack and Michelle Obama produced the movie Leave the World Behind on Netflix, it's a pretty damn good movie. Is this predictive programming? Are they trying to tell us something without telling us?
Well, again, because you hear, again, the news wherever you're at, they're talking about possibly, a civil war. Um, but again, but if you also look on how divided the country is, and how they are, per se, separating people or separating groups, you would tend to believe that there is a possibility. Do I believe that we're actually going to actually have a civil war? No, but not in like an armed conflict civil war, but it's definitely you have one side pitted against the other. So in a sense, you might not have an armed conflict. You're having a conflict. So would that, or could that be considered per se a civil war? You know?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, what would one look like? I mean, when the history books are written about this time, you and I will have long since shuffled off, but we may be in it and don't know it. In the early stages, just like if you look back to prior to 1860, the writing was on the wall with a lot of these decisions, that were coming down the pike that were kind of pushing people into one camp or the other. And those that were living in that time, they didn't see an armed civil war happening either. And I don't think it was a civil war. I think it was more of a war of secession, which is definitely something that could potentially play out here. And that, I mean, we've already kind of seen pieces of it, right, Fred, where you have Governor Abbott throwing up the middle finger to the Biden administration, like, yeah, we don't care.
Yeah,
We're not going to do it. We're not going to follow suit. Well, how many states can do that before you really don't have a United States?
yeah, yeah. But yes, but you're looking looking at that picture. You only have two states right now that I'm aware of that giving, fighting back
Mm-hmm.
on certain things. And again, that one issue obviously is talking about the border. Obviously, you know, and in Congress and everything, we're fighting back and forth for different things here. But I just don't. I don't think we're there yet. But I definitely think people are like pushing that idea or pushing that agenda. Definitely.
Yeah, and and your point, Fred, speaks to something my good friend Mr. Michael Gentili is on this one. It says, "Do you think the division is a small minority with an oversized voice, the media, uh, contesting a majority that doesn't have the national media voice?" And I think he's right. But the problem is, once some of these things get rolling, they seem to take on a life of their own, and that concerns me. Or you have certain actors that really take this to the extreme, and the one that leaps to mind is Eric Rudolph. And those today may not remember Eric Rudolph and his reign of terror, killing abortion doctors, blowing up abortion clinics, and things of this nature. Um, so all you need is a few fringe actors, whether that's a Timothy McVeigh, in the Oklahoma City bombing. I mean, we could go down the list of domestic terrorists as well as the threat of international terrorists. Now, that's something that obviously we've seen since 9/11, but with this porous border that we seem to have, Fred, I mean, the numbers are staggering.
Yeah.
And who's vetting those that are coming across? And the answer is nobody.
Nobody. And just last week, uh, the FBI director Ray was in front of Congress, and he was saying that we should definitely be worried about uh, the international terrorists crossing our border. They have no idea, and it seems like if they do, I mean, look at the homicide that just took place. Again, the names are slipping me, but the guy, the killer, was paroled at our border, and they let him in. So they know there are criminals at the border, and they're letting people like him across the border. How's that possible?
because nobody's vetting them. I mean,
Right.
they're coming in, and we're handling them a bottled water and
But
a plane ticket and a credit card.
even when we are vetting them, they're letting criminals come across. you know.
I still you've been to a lot of third world countries. We read that in your bio. You've been around the world a few times. This ain't your first rodeo, as have I. And if you think people in sub-Saharan Africa or many parts of the Middle East, have birth certificates and all the normal things that we in the first world take for granted, you live in a pipe dream, my friend. I mean, my grandfather, Ralph Brown, he didn't have a birth certificate until like the early 1960s. And like, well, if you want a social security card someday, you're going to have to register your birth. So they went down to the courthouse. He couldn't read and write. He had an old family Bibles like there where I was born here in Roane County, Tennessee, and they registered it. And that's here. So you're coming across the border. It's just that you were a cop. I mean, how many times you pull somebody over? No, I have no ID. My name is Ray Smith, and here's my date of birth. And then you end up arresting them later for criminal impersonation because they're using somebody else's identity. So, I mean, so I think anybody that thinks that stuff's not happening at the southern border is insane.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But what do we, I don't think this, and you talked about leadership earlier, Fred, and I think that it's going to take a leader to change this, man. You and I, all we can do is prepare ourselves and our families. But until the right leader comes into office that can really make meaningful, positive change, we're just going to keep having the same problem.
Correct. And it's kind of like going back to, we'll go back to like law enforcement. And we always heard like, look sharp, be sharp. You don't even have, per se, you don't even have to be strong. Just give the presentation or the image that you're strong. And that goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I want to get to Tony's comment because Tony asked this on another podcast we did recently, and his comment is thoughts on the 15-minute cities. This scare. Are you familiar with this concept, Fred?
What is it again?
The 15-minute cities.
No, I haven't heard of that.
It sounds pretty. It sounds neat. It's kind of a European model. And Tony, give me a bit of road here as I kind of explain, as I understand what this idea is, where you live, work, play, bike. You do all your stuff within a 15-minute little bubble, and everything that you need would be within that 15-minute bubble. The problem is, it briefs well. The problem is when you see it encouraged, and then the next step is it's enforced. No, Fred, you can't. We noticed that your tag registered 45 minutes away from your house. What were you doing over there, Fred? Mm-hmm. One of our traffic cameras spotted you over there. What were you doing over there? We're going to send out some officers to your house to talk to you about what you were up to. And it's like, wait a minute. I didn't like this Walmart. They didn't have the tennis balls I wanted, so I had to go to the other one. And now, you're coming to my house. And if you think this stuff can't happen, I just got back from Europe a couple of months ago, folks. And I'm telling you, on a recent visit, probably 4 years ago, I was in Northern Ireland and I went into a gun store. I'm like, hey, cool, gun store. And talked to them about the laws over there. And man, it is chilling. Yeah, it's like, okay, this is coming to a city near you. This is coming to a country near you. And we're only a few laws away from having it restricted to the point. And I can go down that rabbit hole if you want, but what are your thoughts on this 15-minute city stuff?
I'm not 100% familiar with it, but from what you're saying, and again, this is going to the core of like, we are seeing some of this. Like, we are seeing individuals being tracked for some reasons, whatever they may be. So again, not being 100%, I can only go on from a little bit that I've seen, but or read about. Mm-hmm. It's definitely obviously very a concept that we should be aware of. So again, it's per se like the government watching where you're, again, with or whatever. The concept is if you leave that 15 minutes away from wherever you are, you're out of bounds, and people are keeping an eye on you. Is that the concept?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean,
Okay.
that's what happens, right? With the slide, the mission creep, whatever you want to call it. It starts out as, it's a utopia, right? I'm going to give you, it's a rat utopia. I'm going to give you everything you need within 15 minutes. There's your Starbucks. There's your PF Chang's, wow, look at this. There's a gym to go to. You've got everything you need in your little 15-minute bubble from your house. Isn't that great? And we've designed the city to be perfect for you. You have the perfect manufactured experience for a first world country. The danger is where we've seen the UK say, and they have done this, as I understand it, Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, is they've started knocking on people's doors. Why were you over here? I don't understand. Well, I thought we gave you everything you need. You had all the water and rat pellets you needed over here. What are you doing? And we laugh here at America, but I'm telling you, folks, I'll give you a quick vignette about some of the things that these people are telling me when I visit the UK that are like us, right? They're like, please don't ever lose your rights. And they're like, there was a farmer, one of them was telling me, he said, I was just killing rats in my barn with a BB gun, which are completely legal. So I'm walking across my field out to my barn. I got my little pellet rifle here. Next thing you know, there's a helicopter landing in my field, and they want to see where my guns are. Are they all locked up? Are they all registered, et cetera, et cetera? And they confiscated the BB gun until they could do a forensic analysis to ensure that it is, in fact, a BB gun. He said it was just terrible. They crawled through his house with a microscope. The National Health Institute, the NHIA, or whoever provides healthcare for those in the UK, because it's free, right? It's free. But they're going to ask you about your firearms. They're also going to ask you, how are you feeling today? And if you have any kind of mental health thing, the guns are gone. They're going to come and confiscate everything you've got. And one of the guys said, I have to be careful. If I get in a punch up at a bar, as he said to me, I'm losing everything. And so I think this kind of idea of this creep, I don't know. I'm not ascribing any nefarious intent to it, Fred. I'm just telling you the way these things happen.
Well, Rich, here, and with you being in law enforcement, the one thing that I noticed over the course of the years, mostly with domestic violence, today, if there's a restraining order on you, and my experience, again, anybody can get a restraining order, right? It went from, if a weapon was used during the crime, obviously you had to confiscate it. Right now, it's to the point where if you have a restraining order and there's weapons, and they're seizing, they're taking all the guns.
Yeah,
and you have, obviously we, I think that's a little creep, and it also makes it so hard. Like, once it's dropped or whatever, and I want to say close to 90% that I've ever experienced were dropped, or there was no cause later for a final restraining order. It takes months and months to get everything back.
Yeah,
and they make it so difficult too for the people. No, so.
I was a cop when it was the law in Tennessee was written domestic. You may arrest, and then they changed the word "may" to "you shall arrest." So when a 1083 came out, 152 responded, 1083 at blah 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 blah. 1083 being our code for domestic. I'm not sure what it was where you were at, but I knew I'm taking somebody to jail. I had to. The law didn't give me any wiggle room in that. It went from may which is cool. Officer discretion, I get there. It's obvious he's beat the crap out of her. She's clawed his face to pieces. I'm taking somebody to jail. To somebody's got to go. I'm hooking somebody. And now, like you said, Fred, now we've gone from that to if guns or knives or something else may have been in the house, let's go ahead and remove them. Or the restraining order. Maybe some states have the restraining order where there's a box to check for the judge, remove the weapons from the home. And it's at his discretion to check that box, yes or no.
And what judge today isn't going to check that box no matter what?
Yeah, just to be careful.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And listen, I'm not making, the point is talking about the creep. Obviously, it's domestic violence. Obviously, if you're committing domestic violence, you deserve you deserve to go to jail. You deserve everything. But it seemed to get to the point because you had an argument, and all of a sudden now, and from even girlfriends, instead of wives and girlfriends, all of a sudden you piss somebody off and they're like, okay, I'm calling the cop, and there you have all your firearms are being taken away because now all of a sudden she's afraid.
Well, and again, these are, I think the layperson might hear that and go, oh, they took your guns away. What's the problem? You lost some personal property. No, this is an inherent God-given right, the Second Amendment. And for somebody just to stroke a pen, which is one of the things I don't like what they're doing to the 45th president relative to these gag orders. I think anytime we do that and shut someone, in my opinion, you defeat bad ideas with good ideas. You don't defeat bad ideas by telling somebody to shut up or deplatforming them on social media or some of the tyrannical things we've seen, perhaps, or those Americans on the left do. And I just don't agree with that. If the person's saying some nonsense, let's combat that with good ideas, and instead of telling people to just shut up.
Yeah, no, I agree with, and especially when there's other people on the other side that can just run and spout out anything, and they have free reign.
Yeah. So I've kept you on here about 42 minutes so far, Fred. I want to use the last little bit of time I have with you to kind of come back to our combative roots, if you will.
Sure.
Tell me, in your opinion, Fred, here we are in 2024, what can the average American do to make themselves and perhaps even their families harder to kill?
Obviously, find training. And when I mean, again, it's not just, and I want to say realistic training. Go out, purchase a handgun, get good training in handgun, realistic training, and just don't go to your, even though it could be real easy, just don't go to your local range or whatever you have. Research the people. Everything's online today, and handgun, learn how to use a knife. Obviously, unarmed, which we believe in most situations, like if there's an attack, you're going to have to go unarmed before you go armed. So find a program that can start off with an unarmed program and that can transition into an armed program. Like when we went around doing different seminars and training, Bob Casper, like I said, the founder, everybody sought Bob out for NICOM, the knife combat system of the GHCA. After he was done with the program, and this is what our POI, NICOM POI, is based on also, is the unarmed aspect of it. For the most part, the predator who's attacking you is going to continue until you take control of him. If you have a handgun, if you have a knife on you, you're probably really not thinking about drawing that until you have to take control. So, and besides all that, leading up to unarmed knife, handgun, research predatory movements, research pre-attack indicators, because if you can pick up, if you can pick up the initial threat, the easier it is going to be you to deal with and possibly escape from before anything else can happen. So those are the areas that we should be researching, because you may never need that tool in that toolbox, but once you do need it and you don't have it, you're going to wish that you did.
Yeah, great point. So I'm hearing awareness and avoidance, unarmed combatives, and then maybe edge weapons and probably a handgun.
Yep.
Okay. What state do you live in, if you don't mind me asking?
In New Jersey.
New Jersey. Okay. I'll be up in your neck of the woods next month doing some training with some folks. So,
what area?
Fort Dix on base.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
I'm about 40 minutes away from there. That's 40 south, 40 minutes south.
All right, cool. We'll talk about that when we get offline.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Fred, where can folks find you, follow you, get access to your book and information?
All right. They can get access through the Facebook page. We run like I said, we run the page. They can get access via that page. The book is now it's on Amazon, so they can pick that up there. So that's those are the simplest ways to get a hold of me.
Cool. And I'll have links in the show notes for this information. One of the things I'll kind of close out with today, Fred, is something to keep in mind as we continue to train and prepare ourselves, our bodies, our minds, our equipment, our families, is what Tony is talking. It's just keep in mind, I believe there is a national swing in our nation's jury pool that only the loser of the fight is the victim. That is scary. And of course, he's referencing the Apple River trial recently in Wisconsin. And that's really something we're going to have to keep in mind, because we have seen some clear-cut cases of self-defense. I'm not necessarily implying that Apple River was a perfect clear-cut case. And if you haven't listened to the show I did with Attorney Andrew Branca and Dr. T.C. Fuller on the Apple River trial, I encourage those listening to go back and check that out. It's on YouTube, on Andrew's Law Self-Defense YouTube page, as well as ours. So, but he has a great point, man, and we need to be considering that.
Yes, but here's the other thing too is, and one of the classic sayings in law enforcement, if I remember correctly, it was rather be tried by 12 than carried by 6.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, there's that. Yes, you have to be aware of that. But I also believe, because I want to jump back to a little bit with law enforcement training, they've got some of these people, recruits and officers, so scared to go hands on because they think they're going to get in trouble, and it's almost to the point where society, yes, you have to have it in the back of your mind, but you can't have that in the back of your mind to where you think that you're not, or you can't protect yourself because you might get in trouble.
Well, the recent
right?
Fred, I don't know if you've followed the recent shooting of Dexter Reed in Chicago. Yeah, but there's an example where he fired on the police officers first. There's no dispute in that, and yet the community, there's a certain part of the Chicago community that's ready to burn the city to the ground because the officers fired back and killed him. We've seen his mother faint on TV. We've seen, the the review boards and stuff, like even the review boards. And that's another problem, which Florida is combating with a recent bill. I don't know if you saw that, where from now on the review boards will be made up of police officers. They understand the policies and procedures. You know, they walk that job, and if they find your conduct reasonable given the facts and the available evidence, then you're probably going to be good to go. To let a suburban housewife or some an academic judge the conduct of an officer in an elevated situation like that, I think is perhaps unfair, because they only know what's going to be presented at trial, and they might not get the full picture of what's going on.
Right. And there goes, when I was going through, it kind of like changed. It was the reasonable officer, then it went to reasonable person. Mm-hmm. And then a reasonable person doesn't understand unless they go through the training and stuff like that we do. And then it's kind of like switched back to the reasonable officer. So that's who's evaluating the use of force stuff in law enforcement now, and that's the way it should be. So,
yeah, it's man. These are problems, and the way I look at it is, when I was a police officer, I don't want to be there anyway. It's you, the individual citizen, that voted on these laws, and now you're entrusting me to go and enforce the things that you said you wanted. So when I go and enforce the things that you, as a citizenry, said you wanted, these are laws that are so important to us, Rich, go do this. Okay, no problem. I'll go do it. And then it's like, now I'm the bad guy?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
I also believe, and again, it could be a society thing. Obviously, we're given, people want to be protected. They want law enforcement, right? They know that at times the job could lead to violence, but it seems like when it does turn violent, everybody cowers. Like they can't believe how violent violence is.
Right.
And it's like, well, how why is that being used, or why is that being? Because again, violence is violent.
Yeah.
So.
I was watching some of the Dexter Reed, some of the people that were, at the yelling at the city council there in Chicago, and I wanted to hand them a loaded handgun, like, hold on to that, and then I start shooting at them. What are you going to do? There's only one tool that can stop me from killing you right now. And I don't understand. What do you expect? What do you want the police officers to do when confronted with jacketed hollow points?
Right. You know what I expect? I expect the media to tell the truth.
Right.
They didn't even let anybody know that there was one of the officers were actually shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In the wrist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He was shot. That never even came up. Never ever came up. Or it was only like whatever. They knew exactly how many rounds it was and how many seconds. It's just out and out. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Now, yeah. That one of the officers, as I understand it, and just reading up on it, fired 50 rounds, which is, maybe justified, maybe not. I don't know. Somebody's going to look into that. I can assure you that. And he's going to have to count for every single one of those. And if you're firing into a vehicle that has tinted windows, what is the target you're aiming at? I've had friends that have been fired off the SWAT team for armed suspect keeps poking his head around the wall, shooting at officers. And finally my buddy's like, that's sheetrock. My bullets go through sheetrock. And, he fired right through it and took the guy out. And of course they're like, well, you didn't have a clear threat, right? And he was cleared of the shooting, but removed from the team. So these kind of things will be thoroughly investigated, man. The wheels of justice will grind through. But I think you're right. The media, come on. All we're asking for is the truth. Don't slant it to one side or the other.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Fred, I kept you on here about an hour, my friend. Fred's going to send me those links. I'm going to ensure that they go in the show notes. So if you want to check out their Facebook page, find out about training opportunities, we're going to give you some links to Fred's book on Amazon. I know I need to pick up a copy because I am interested in, again, like you said, Fred, what our combative forefathers thought about it, and what are some of the things that they did, and what can we learn from it today?
I appreciate the time, and if we have time, in the future, maybe we could we'll hook up, and I'll send you a link. Our organization kind of gets together every year to go and review our POI, and this year we're actually in Tennessee, so I'll let you know the dates, and obviously you're invited.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Yeah, when I was speaking to, you're bringing out Ken Goodman, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's again, Ken. We met about a year ago at a seminar. We've been in touch. We've been picking each other's brains, and yes, he's invited also out there.
Yeah. Hopefully we can sit down in a pub and have a pint and discuss it. I really look forward to it.
Excellent.
All right, Fred.
All right.
Stay blessed, brother. And guys and gals out there in Warrior Nation, remember, the fight is coming. Be ready.
Thanks, Rich.